The second a customer pulls up AI numbers and a salesperson turns it into a fight, the sale starts dying. The better move is simple. Stay calm, get curious, and use that moment to build trust instead of breaking it. Hello, I'm Frankie, founder of Auto Dojo, the path to excellence, and welcome to today's Auto Dojo Quick Hit. 5 minutes, one skill, zero excuses. Let's go. What's happening right now with AI is the same kind of shift that I experienced in the late 90s when the internet changed the world and the way everyone did business. Customers have more information, more tools, and more ways to challenge your process. That is not the end of sales, that is the beginning of a new skill set. The winner is not the person who resists the change, the winner is the person who learns how to use it. And I saw a perfect example of that today. I was doing a sales workshop at a dealership with some young, newer sales consultants, good people, hard workers, but only selling 6 or 7 cars a month, complaining about the economy, the industry, all the usual noise. But at the end of the workshop, once we started talking through real scenarios, one of them said, "What do I do when a customer shows me a payment from AI?" That's the make or break moment, because one of the sales consultants had actually just had that happen, and more customers are resorting to AI to, in some cases, negotiate the whole deal for them. The customer came in already armed with AI generated numbers, not just a vague idea, an actual number. And of course, the natural reaction is to get defensive. The instinct is to push back, challenge it, maybe even get a little offended. But that is exactly the wrong move. The customer's not just handing you a number. They are handing you a fear. What they're really saying is, I don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want to feel stupid. I don't want to walk out of here and realize I paid too much. That's the real situation. So instead of making it a battle, I coach the consultant to lean in and get curious. Say something like, "I'm curious where that number came from. I'm curious how you prompted the AI. I'd love to know what sources it pulled from." In fact, actually ask their AI where they got their information. Tell it who it is and prompt it yourself to tap into specific, credible, and reputable resources. That simple shift can change everything, because now you're not fighting the customer, you are learning from the customer, and you are using their resource to move forward in the process. And that matters because a lot of AI output is only as good as the initial prompt and the sources that it is directed to pull from. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they are a total mess. Sometimes they're based on solid information, sometimes they're just polished nonsense with a confident tone. So why argue when you can investigate? Why challenge when you can clarify? That is the skill set to learn. The current reality is that AI is becoming to today's customer what the internet became in the late 90s and early 2000s. The people who adapted stayed relevant. The people who didn't became obsolete. I worked with some of those sales consultants in the late 90s, and I would hear them over and over again complaining about how customers knew too much, they couldn't make money because of the internet, how it needed to go away, and they refused to learn it and didn't know how to adapt to it. They didn't last very long. The exact same thing is happening now with AI. If you refuse to learn the technology, you become obsolete. If you lean in and really learn how to use it effectively, you become more valuable. But here's the deeper and more important lesson. The customer is using AI because they want to feel protected. They want information. They want leverage. They want certainty. And if you build trust early in the process, you don't have to defend yourself later. If they already trust you, AI becomes a conversation tool, not a weapon. That's why the beginning of the sales process matters so much. Rapport is not just a suggestion. Trust is not optional. If the customer believes you are genuinely helpful, then when they come in with numbers, they're more likely to have a conversation than a confrontation. And if they are still defensive, that's your cue to slow down and remember that it really comes down to biology. People fight hardest when they are scared. So what do? You say, "Okay, let's take a look at that together." You keep your voice calm. You keep your ego out of it. You ask questions. You get curious. You find out what they asked AI, what assumptions it made, and where they pulled the information from. Sometimes you may even learn something useful that helps you better understand where customers are getting their information now. That's the real opportunity, not to win the argument, to win the relationship. Because once you turn it into a battle, you have already lost. But if you stay steady, respectful, and curious, you can turn a potentially ugly moment into a trust-building moment. And that's how you stay relevant in a world that keeps changing. So go do it now. The next time a customer brings in AI numbers, don't challenge them first. Ask 3 curious questions: where the numbers came from, how they prompted AI, and what sources it used. Then write down one thing you learned that could help you next time. Why is this important? Because the customer is not trying to beat you, they're trying to protect themselves. When you understand that, you stop fighting the symptom and start addressing the fear underneath it. That is how you build trust, strengthen rapport, and stay valuable in a changing world. So go take action, keep the customer first, and go dominate your floor. To receive these directly into your inbox every week, scan the QR code you see here, and I look forward to serving you in the Auto Dojo soon.